Wow, art, the strength, the dialogue, and what comes out of it. A couple years ago, I was asked to go and speak to a group of young men that I did not know anything about. These young men were from a place called George Junior Republic. And they had a teacher named Glen Sanders. This program was called Pointing the Way. They took the metal department where they were teaching these young people skills. These young men were at-risk youth. And they created signs for this small community in Western Pennsylvania, Grove City. When I went there and spoke, I saw so much equity in these young men. I saw how they were proud of their welds and how we would tease about who had the best weld. And I thought about where they came from and how they probably didn't have a lot of equity in life. This was a place they could go and show even their children, if they have children down the road, or come back to and say, hey, I did that piece and I'm proud of that. I didn't think much more about it. Then a couple years later, the phone rang and it was Glen Sanders. He asked if I'd like to be involved in that program. I said, yeah, that would be an honor. However, I got some ideas. And I think there was a pause at this time. And I said, I really like to hear the young men's story. So he said, well, okay, fine. Come up with the criteria. The program was called Man Up, and it was about hearing what they had to say. The art, the dialogue, it was about their stories. As we got started, it was no longer the metal department. The wood department, the shop wanted to get involved. The art department wanted to get involved. And of course, from the beginning, Glen Sanders' after-school program was involved from day one. As we started to see these stories come out about the young men. And the stories were about abuse, sex, about abandonment, about concern for their siblings. They all believe that they're not going to live to the age of 19. I mean, it's a different perspective that I was looking at when I looked at these young people. And I learned from them as much as I hope they learned from me. At the end of the day, I hope that what we're doing is setting seeds so that these young people don't repeat that cycle. As the one young man told me, he said, I've abused somebody. He said, but I was also abused. He said, the abused sometimes become the abuser, and I'm getting counseling for that, and I want to change that. I thought, wow, what a special thing to say. We then got funding to do a sculpture in Homestead, where the great Homestead Strike took place about 100 years ago at the pump house. And there was this huge fight between labor and management, and I had found some old trusses that had actually come from there that were over 100 years old. So we had come up with an idea that the young men worked on, and they were lifting this truss. They looked like stick figures, but there's that pain and that effort to get above something, and I felt that there was a parallel between these young men and between that event. So we set the sculpture, it all went well, and then we got involved in another one called Push, which is a sculpture about similar stuff. And this came out of Glen Sanders' class, and how we took the maquettes and the models and kind of merged them together and came up with this idea. I think that this can be life-changing. When we got involved in it, we kind of all looked at each other like, wow, this is some big stuff. They're not hearing this over in counseling, but we need their help. We need to share it. It was so much of an honor to hear their stories. And I know that some of these young people are going to go to great heights and great spaces. I know we can't save them all, but if we all work at it, great things can happen.